You just brought a rabbit home in Singapore, and now you're standing in the pet aisle staring at 20 kinds of food, and none of it tells you what your rabbit actually needs. The colorful bags look the most generous. They are usually the worst thing you can buy. I'm a rabbit owner, not a vet. I just read the local rabbit groups, so you don't have to wade through 300 comments to find the one useful answer. So today I'm going to walk you through what to feed a rabbit in Singapore. The simple version, the version that keeps a rabbit healthy in our heat and our small HDB flats. Here's what we'll cover, and I promise it's less complicated than that pet aisle made it feel. Let's start with the single idea that fixes most rabbit diet problems. Think of the whole diet as a simple split. About 85% of what your rabbit eats should be hay. About 10% should be fresh leafy greens, and only about 5%, the smallest slice, should be pellets. That's the whole model. Hay first, greens next, a little pellet last. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember that order, because almost every feeding mistake I see in the groups comes from flipping it upside down and making pellets the main meal. Now let me explain why hay sits at the very top, because once it clicks, you never look at that hay rack the same way again. A rabbit's gut and a rabbit's teeth both depend on constant fiber moving through, all day long. Their digestive system is built to be always working gently on rough grassy material. When hay runs out, two things start to go wrong. The gut slows down, and a slow gut in a rabbit is a real emergency. And the teeth, which never stop growing, stop getting worn down by all that chewing, so they overgrow. In our warm climate, both of those problems move faster, not slower. That's why hay isn't a side dish. It's the main course, and it should be in front of your rabbit every single hour of the day. So unlimited hay, always topped up. But which hay? Because that aisle has a few options too. For a normal adult rabbit, Timothy hay is the gold standard. It's the one to build the diet around. You can mix in some oaten hay or meadow hay for a bit of variety. And honestly, a rabbit that has a few textures to pick through tends to eat more of it, which is exactly what you want. The one type to be careful with is alfalfa. Alfalfa is rich, high in calcium and calories, and is really meant for babies, not grown rabbits. So if you have an adult, keep the daily hay as a grass hay like Timothy, and treat alfalfa as a baby food, which I'll come back to near the end. Now the part that trips up the most new owners here, the pellets. Here's the trap. The bags that look the most appealing are often muesli-style mixes, the ones with seeds, dried fruit, little colored bits, things shaped like cereal. They look like a treat your rabbit deserves. The problem is rabbits pick out the sweet sugary pieces and leave the boring healthy ones, so they end up eating an unbalanced fattening diet and skipping the fiber. What you actually want is the boring option. Plain pellets, all one uniform shape and color. No seeds, no dried fruit, no rainbow pieces. Brands you'll see locally like Oxbow, Burgess, and Selective do this plain pellet properly. And pellets are measured, not poured, which is the second half of the trap. The simple guide is about 1 tablespoon of plain pellets per kilogram of body weight per day, split into 2 small meals. So a 1.5 kilogram Holland Lop gets around 1.5 tablespoons in a day. Half in the morning, half at night. That is a small amount, and it's meant to be. Pellets are the supplement, not the meal. One more thing on quality. Adult rabbits do well on pellets around 12 to 14% protein. Babies need more, around 16%, but for a grown rabbit, the higher protein baby formula isn't what you want long term. Next, the fun part, the fresh greens, and the good news is you can buy almost all of these on a normal grocery run. Your everyday safe greens are easy to find here. Romaine lettuce is a great base. Cilantro, which you'll see labeled as Chinese parsley at NTUC or Shengxiong, is usually a big hit. Parsley, basil, mint, dill, and bok choy all work well too. Give a good variety, because mixing a few different greens is better than relying on just one. A rough serving is about 1 to 2 cups of mixed greens per kilogram of body weight per day. Then there are the occasional greens, the ones you offer maybe once or twice a week, rather than daily, like carrot tops, kale, and watercress. but a few common vegetables you want to keep well away from your rabbit, so let me be clear about those. Skip iceberg lettuce entirely. It's mostly water, very little goodness, and it can upset their stomach. So reach for romaine instead, never iceberg. And there are foods that are simply not safe for rabbits at all. No onions, no garlic, no leeks, no avocado, no raw potato. These aren't snacks to give in small amounts. They're just off the menu. When in doubt, don't. And check the feeding guide on the site before trying anything new. Let's talk water, because in our climate, this one matters more than people expect. A rabbit in Singapore drinks more than a rabbit in a cool country, simply because it's hot here. A 1.5 kilogram adult might drink around 300 to 400 milliliters a day, where in a temperate climate, it might be 2 to 300. So fresh water needs to be available all the time, and refilled at least twice a day. Bowl or bottle is fine, both are common. Some rabbits prefer a bowl because they can drink faster, so if yours seems to barely touch a bottle, try offering a heavy bowl as well. The goal is just that they're always drinking enough. Now treats, because everyone wants to spoil their rabbit, and you can within limits. Treats are a tiny category, not a meal. A small slice of apple with the seeds removed, a sliver of carrot, a single blueberry, a little piece of dried banana. These are all fine now and then. The rule of thumb is that the total treats in a day should fit in about a teaspoon. Fruit especially is sugary, so it's a once-in-a-while thing, not a daily habit. And please skip the packets at the shop labeled rabbit treats that are full of seeds, the yogurt drops, and anything bread-like. They're made to look appealing to you, not to be good for your rabbit. Now a really important one that the bags never mention, changing a rabbit's food. If you've just brought a rabbit home, or you're switching hay brands, or introducing a new green, go slow. A rabbit's gut is sensitive, and a sudden change can throw it off. Introduce one new thing at a time, in a small amount, and give it a few days before adding the next. Keep the hay constant through all of it, because hay is the steadying part of the diet. And here's the line that matters most. If your rabbit goes off its food, stops eating, or stops pooping, that is not something to wait out or treat at home. A rabbit that isn't eating needs a rabbit-savvy vet quickly. I'm not going to give you any home remedy for that because there isn't a safe one. You see a vet, and since we are on vets, one quick standing piece of advice for new owners. When you first get a rabbit, it's worth booking a checkup with an exotic vet in Singapore within the first couple of weeks, just to start off on the right foot. And for anything ongoing, whether that's your rabbit gaining too much weight, losing weight, or just something feeling off, that's a vet conversation, not a guessing game from a video. We keep a vet directory on the site exactly for this, so you're not scrambling to find a rabbit-savvy clinic when you actually need one. Let me come back to something I promised earlier. Feeding a baby rabbit versus an adult. A young rabbit, roughly under 6 months, is still growing, so its needs are a bit different. This is the one time alfalfa makes sense, because that richness, the extra calcium and calories that's too much for an adult, is useful for a growing body. Babies also do better on the higher protein pellet, around that 16%, where adults drop down to 12 to 14. But here's what stays exactly the same at every age. Unlimited grass hay, always available from the very start. You don't wait until they're grown to give hay. The hay habit begins on day 1, and it never stops. And the last practical thing, which is very specific to living here, keeping your hay from going off. Singapore is humid, and humidity is the enemy of hay. An open bag left on the kitchen counter can go dusty and stale within a couple of weeks, and damp hay can turn moldy, which you never want a rabbit eating. So the simple fix is storage. Keep the bulk of your hay sealed up in a cool spot and tip a working amount into an airtight container that you actually use day to day. Buy in sensible quantities rather than a giant sack that will spoil before you finish it. If hay ever smells musty or looks dusty or discolored, throw it out. It's not worth the risk. There's a separate guide on the site for where to actually buy good hay here, which I'll point you to. So that's the whole picture, and it really does come back to that one split. 85% hay, 10% fresh greens, 5% plain pellets, water always topped up, treats kept to a teaspoon, and a slow hand whenever you change anything. Get that order right, hay first, and you've done the hard part of keeping a Singapore rabbit healthy. Everything else is just fine-tuning. If you found this useful, come over to singaporerabbit.com, where we put out a free weekly digest for Singapore rabbit owners, plus our directories for rabbit-savvy vets and trusted places to buy supplies here. It's all the stuff I wish someone had handed me on day one in one place. And next time I'm going to cover setting up a rabbit space in a HDB flat, the litter training, the flooring, and the heat side of things that nobody warns you about. If you want that one when it lands, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.